You don't need anyone's permission to love yourself but your own.
Do what's right for your body, tune into it, learn how to listen to your body and celebrate your wins, even small wins. Celebrate wins. That is one thing I'm really all about.
Hello and welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. This is the best place to find inspiring stories of women and girls across the country and to find ways that you can change the world through your own life. It's your girl Kate here, and I'm excited to share this inspiring and fun conversation with you. But before we get into it, please make sure that you subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's another way that you can make sure that you get all of our new documentaries, videos, and our new podcast episodes emailed to you every week. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and TikTok at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And please make sure that you share our content with your family, friends, and followers. I always say on this podcast that is the free and easy way to support any person and organization that we highlight, but that also helps us grow this platform. You can find out more information about One Girl Revolution, find all of our podcast episodes, donate to our nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, watch our Emmy-nominated documentaries, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Melanie Samuels and Melissa Coulier, founders of Living Well with Mel and Mel, or Mel and Mel, kind of like the Spice Girls. These two women are changing the world through their lives every single day, and I honestly don't know how they accomplish everything that they do, but I've been following their morning routine interviews on Instagram, and I love it so much, but honestly, that's probably the morning routines that is helping them accomplish everything that they do. So check out their Instagram, and they're also hosting a masterclass on April 22nd, specifically about building a morning routine. So check that out. The links for both their Instagram page and their masterclass are in the show notes, so you can check it out easily. Mel and Mel met on the set of Fuller House. Melissa's husband was on the show and Melanie was working in production. You'll hear that story in this episode. Melanie had struggled with disordered eating throughout her life and decided to go back to school to become a nutritional therapy practitioner. Melissa has lupus and had struggled to find solutions to the things that were going on with her body, and they connected over their mutual passion for health and wellness, and the rest is history. Melanie is a nutritional therapy practitioner, and Melissa is a photographer, documentarian, and fitness instructor. They are both women of many talents and passions, but they connected over their passion for health and wellness, which is how they founded Living Well with Mel and Mel. And as you'll hear in this episode, they share my passion for truly empowering women to ask questions, learn about their bodies, and feel empowered to take control over our lives and over our health and wellness. There is so much more I could say about these two incredible women, but I'll let them speak for themselves. So without further ado, here's Mel and Mel. And no, not the Spice Girls, the health and wellness girls, Mel and Mel. Mel and Mel, thank you so much for coming on the One Girl Revolution podcast, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us and allowing us to share our stories with your community.
I am so excited to have you both on for many reasons. I just adore both of you, and I've loved getting to know you both and spend time with you. And so now I'm excited for all of our audience to get to know you more and know more about your stories and your lives. And I was actually laughing this morning when I was preparing for this interview because I was like, Mel, it was reminded me of like Mel B and Mel C from the Spice Girls. It's like the two Mels. So we have Melissa and Melanie, but I'm really excited to have you on to talk about your great work. And you both are women of many talents. And I want to talk about all the different things, who you are, where you're from, a little bit about each of you and your stories before we get into what you're doing together and then what you're doing separately. You have so many things to unfold and unpack here. So I guess just to get us started, Melissa, I'd love to hear just a little bit about your own story, who you are, where you're from, and not necessarily what you do, but really who you are. I think that's an important thing for people to hear from you.
Born and raised in Montana, from a very small town. I am the daughter of a logger and a stay-at-home mom who then also became an author and a private investigator. So lots of wide range there. And had big dreams to become an advertising photographer from a really young age. I was always really infatuated with art and photography and just being outside and trying to immerse myself in like all the creative things that I could and different like climbing trees, making sculptures out of like mud and just paying attention to all the surroundings. Spending a lot of time outside. And my grandmother gifted me a camera when I was 11 for my birthday. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to be a professional photographer. But I didn't really know how to go about that or where that was going to lead me. So I would ride my bike to the local Albertsons and just like sit in the magazine aisle looking at imagery and wondering like, who took these? Like, how do I get there? The only thing I really knew was senior portraits or weddings. That was kind of like the only photographer that was like in our town that I had to look to. And so then a photographer who shot for National Geographic actually started attending a church that my family attended at the time. And so my parents like set up this meetup for me to ask him questions. And I was given the name of a community college in order to gain experience. So I followed that path, led me to studying in Florence, Italy, eventually moving to Los Angeles. And then I got an entry level job at a digital capture firm in Los Angeles, working with the top industry leaders in photography. And from there, I just kind of like worked my way up. But the first year that I moved out to LA and had this job, I had an interesting incident that was like a little scary where I blacked out while driving. And after a few hospital visits and mounds of testing later, I was diagnosed with lupus. And so how they found out was I had this blood clot that hit the auricle in my brain. And as a kid and a teen, I had a lot of chronic pain and migraines because I had a spinal tap and Sherman's disease. So adding this diagnosis of lupus was like a little nerve-wracking, scary, but at the same time, like a relief because I actually found out there was like a diagnosis to these other symptoms I had been experiencing with this move, which was like hair loss and mouth ulcers and joint pain and rashes. And so it was something that now I was able to like hone in on and figure out like how to address it. So continuing to just like work through the photography industry and producing, I eventually ventured out on my own and started a photography company. And then I started shooting celebrity editorials, advertising shoots, and book covers with this stress from a freelancer lifestyle and the physical toll that it took on my body. It became pretty frequent. So I was regularly taking steroids to combat them, and I was on different medications, like two to five a day, like depending on the month that it was. And so after years of trying to figure out how to manage it, I just became like, I started identifying with the pain. And I don't know if you guys can relate to that or if any of the audience can relate to that, of just, I knew that I didn't want to have that be my identifier and I wanted so much more. So I really, at that point, knew I needed to like reclaim my body and my health. So I put in the year's work to do that. The story with Mel and I's introduction is somewhere in there, but we'll get to that later. So after all these years of working holistically on my body, I then started a new passion and found a career as a fitness instructor, and still shooting, but just in a different way. And it just like led me into this area that I honestly am so passionate about, of like helping individuals heal their body, lower inflammation through movement. And it just like that purpose has been everything for me. I'm just really passionate about the power of movement and how it can heal. And
you guys are both testament to the fact that you don't have to die to have many lives. And that's one thing that I was thinking about as I was preparing for this. We kind of all connected even just through our own health journeys, and people that listen to this podcast know about my own health journey and striving to heal my body and change things. It's encouraging to me to meet people like you and hear from both of you about your own journeys, because it encourages me. And it also kind of makes me feel like I'm not alone. And I know that so many people who are listening, Mel, both the Mels, they may have be going through something or trying to identify something, and just knowing that there are other options out there. And it's good to ask questions, and it's empowering for women. That's one thing that I care so deeply about, which you both know, and everybody who listens to this podcast, is really empowering women through asking questions and challenging, what they're being told by one doctor possibly, and asking questions and finding other things that may help and may work. So Melanie, I want to transition over to you to tell your story, and then we'll get into how you both met, because there's a lot to unpack there and what you're doing now together. But I'd love to hear just a little bit about your story, who you are, where you're from, and how you got into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I was born in Toledo, Ohio, which just a couple of hours from you guys. My parents are and were at the time classical musicians. So at the time, they were both in the Toledo Symphony, and then my dad won a job in the Pittsburgh Symphony after I had finished elementary school. So we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I really do call home, because I had those pivotal years there, and I'm a big Pittsburgh lover. So I lived in Pittsburgh, grew up there, and because my parents were in the arts, there was always music in my house. And we had such an interesting childhood, my brother and I, growing up sort of backstage, and the things that we were exposed to and the places that we got to travel to, it was really, really amazing. So grateful for that experience. And it also gave me the ability to dream, because I saw them succeed at such a specific art that I sort of was like, I can do this too in some form. I played the violin growing up since I was 4 years old, and I actually played through college, but not as seriously. They never put pressure on me to say, like, you have to become one of the 10% like we are as far as succeeding in classical music. But my passions were always all over the place. I always loved film, which I kind of inherited from my dad. He used to teach film at a charter school, and he's just super knowledgeable about film and television. So he kind of passed on that interest to me. And I also played sports. I was in a dance company. I was just always doing a lot of different things, but I had my eye on the prize as far as Hollywood, and I just wanted to be part of creating content. And specifically behind the scenes, I said I wanted to be a producer from, I think, probably age 12. So I really pursued that path. And I went to college at the University of San Francisco, where I studied media and business. And while I was there, I was doing tons of internships and producing small commercials on the side, and just really kind of diving in. After college, I moved to LA, and I started, as we all do, most of us do it in production, as a PA. And so running around, doing errands and just the unglamorous work. But worked my way up in the production office, and worked on a lot of Disney Channel stuff at first. And then I moved into more network TV. And then when, the Netflix world came in, there were just so many other shows around. And then that's when I worked on Fuller House, which we'll come full circle to in a minute. And that show honestly changed my life in more ways than one, which we'll definitely touch upon. So kind of backtracking that to those high school years, I really struggled with body image, weight, but mostly the mentality behind both of those things. So I did have disordered eating from the age, I would say, 15 through my early 20s. And so that sort of transitioned itself into a fascination in nutrition beyond those years, because I really struggled because of what I was seeing in front of the camera. And now coming to my career, where you wouldn't associate that necessarily with food and body image, but you're around it now as a front row seat. So my issues sort of started to come up again for myself, but I also turned it into a fascination of like, what's the solution here? Can we still love our bodies and can we nourish them properly? So I turned that fascination into something that is so unlike me, because I am very type A and not one to be like, well, I think I'm ready for my next career. But that sort of thing now I was seeing so much was the second careers and people pursuing passions or transitioning passions that they thought maybe it initially wasn't the plan. So I went back to school. I went to the Nutritional Therapy Association to get my certification as a nutritional therapy practitioner. And it was the best decision I could have ever made. I not only changed my own life with the knowledge that I gained, but then I transferred it to other people, which to me is the best thing in the world, is to share knowledge and help other people. So that's what brought me here. I currently live in LA with my husband and my 1.5-year-old daughter.
Both of your stories have touched me in such a special way, like just so beautiful, that you don't have to die to have many lives, like I mentioned, but there are these suddenly moments. I was texting Mel earlier just about how one of my friends talks about suddenly moments, and you think that you're on the right path, or maybe you're sitting in a place where you're struggling and trying to figure out what your hopes and dreams are. And then all of the sudden, something just kind of happens. And that is really, both of your journeys in different ways, but also how you met. It was a suddenly moment, and how your lives changed. Fuller House is all to thank for that. So I guess I know there are two sides to every story. Mel, maybe we'll start with you. How you met Melanie?
Okay, so my husband is. I guess I should also say I'm residing in Detroit. I have a husband and 3 dogs. I didn't say that. My husband, who is an actor, plays the character of Joey Gladstone on Full House. And so when Fuller House came back, we were on set and Dave was like, oh, there's this girl in production. She's amazing. I think you'll really like her. Her name's Melanie, another Mel. We all call her Mel. I'm like, okay, great. And at first when someone has that moment where they're like, you're going to love this person. And then you're like, that hype is set up. So you're like, am I? And we did. And it was like instant connection. We started going on hikes constantly. We just had so much in alignment with not only where we were, but like how and where we wanted to take our lives, and the goals that we had set, and just the ambition was of equal nature. We were on a hike and I was just kind of venting about how I feel like I've always associated with like this pain, this like chronic pain, and how I've always it's just like that place where you kind of feel almost like a hypochondriac, because you're like, this can't be real. Like, I can't have another symptom. I can't have another thing. And so we got into this really heavy conversation about that and the psychology of pain. And that's when Melanie opened up about like the path that she wanted to take with nutrition. And I was like, okay, I want to be your first client if like you're going to do this. And she was like, I'd love to like help you try to navigate this. And it kind of snowballed from there.
I'd been thinking about leaving for a little while, but I think I was nervous to tell anybody because it seemed like such a crazy decision in my head. But to see Melissa not only support it, but be able to benefit from it, I was like, okay, there are people out there who need my help. And it's just so interesting because both of us, I think our struggles were so different, but there was so much in common, which was really that mindset component about how we think about health. And
and I hadn't taken a holistic approach or a mindset to it. It was all about like, okay, let's medicate just to like get through the day, to like get so I can go have fun, so I can eat whatever I want, so I can do all the things everyone else is doing.
It must be difficult for each of you too. You had you had these dreams, hopes, and aspirations that you were fighting for so many years and working towards. And then this bomb kind of gets dropped where you're like, well, I kind of want to do all the things, or I kind of want to do both things. And so, but especially like for you, Melanie, to walk away from production, living in LA, I'm sure was difficult to transition into the work that you're doing with health and nutrition.
It was really scary because I had worked what I felt was my whole life to succeed at this one thing. And here I am sitting in Warner Brothers studios, kind of quote unquote living the dream. But that wasn't my purpose. And I had to really accept that. And it really does show me, I'm such a believer in everything happens for a reason. And that decision did validate that idea, because so many of my clients are people that I worked with on Fuller House. And I took those experiences to build upon other experiences. And I think that's important for people who are thinking about making a pivot, is that sometimes those are just everything that you've decided that far have served as building blocks and you haven't even realized it yet.
And then Melissa, you've just kind of continued the path with photography, but also just like added on all of these amazing things too. So you're just a multifaceted woman on a mission.
Definitely on a mission. Yeah. No, I think, and photography definitely has taken new shape. There's a different purpose for me in the work that I'm hoping to create next. Is more healing, intentional work for your environment and accessible to everybody. The platform of photography changed so drastically when COVID hit, and I happened to just move out of LA during that time as well. So it's almost like everything like Mel was saying, everything kind of happened for a reason in its own time and how it was supposed to. And I feel like I had to go through that, like the rough transition to really figure out like, what is it that brings me the most joy? And for me, that's making sure that other individuals have information that could potentially allow them to live a pain-free life by movement and mindfulness and breath work and nutrition, by just taking that holistic approach.
We need more of that in this world. And the three of us have talked about that so many times, where we need to have a holistic approach, looking at women and our bodies and talking about things, and an openness, an open communication too, because I feel like so many things, especially with regards to women, it's like, shh, don't talk about it. And I remember my mom even telling me stories about when she was a little girl and started her cycle, and it was like, go in the bathroom, don't tell anybody, like, this is so embarrassing, don't do it. And it's like that, I feel like so often in women's lives, we kind of have people have that same attitude towards us. And it's like, no, we need to actually just like pull open the curtain and have these real life conversations and say, this is what I'm going through, whether it's mental health, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's medical struggles and things that we're going through. How do we really open the communication, which was a huge part of why I wanted to have both of you on. And I hope that this is just the beginning of so many other things. I know it's the beginning of so many other things, and having you back on to dig deeper. So that this is kind of almost just like a teaser to everybody who's listening for what is to come. But I want to talk about your individual projects. But before we get into that, I want to talk about living well with Mel and Mel, and what you're doing together and what you're creating together and what your offerings are for people that are listening. I know you told a little bit about how you connected and how it started, but I would love to hear more about your platform and what you're doing. Melanie, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. So Living Well with Mel and Mel is a community that helps women address inflammation in realistic and sustainable ways through mindfulness, through nutrition, and through movement. And both Mel is Melissa, and I have kind of combined our crafts to bring different things to that table. So I really focus on all of the nutrition content. Melissa focuses on the movement content. And then together we really build the mindset component, because that is such a universal concept. We felt like there was a need for this because wellness can have such an intimidating presence, and especially wellness communities. Certain wellness communities can feel like you don't fit in there. And what we celebrate is bioindividuality, which is the idea that every single person is different because they have different genes, they have different needs and circumstances and environments, and we celebrate that difference. So we were just talking on the phone yesterday about how we felt like sometimes health can be this party that people don't know if they're invited to, but our ticket to the Mel and Mel party is having that individual component, being different than every single person. And we do really try to speak to that and have people celebrate their differences in their health journeys. We provide content through our Instagram, through our website, and we have so many things in the works that we just want to shout from the rooftops about, but things are still taking time to build.
We also have, you can sign up be part of our like email subscriptions. We do these newsletters giving even extra additional content to the individuals that are on there. Like Mel said, we have some really exciting projects that are going to be released, but not fully there yet. However, the one project that we do have coming up that we're very excited about it's called Waking Well with Mel and Mel. It's a masterclass on our morning routine and how you can like have a morning routine work for you and how to individualize that to make so that you can set yourself up for your optimal health and what that looks like for you, personalizing that, and just the power of information behind a morning routine, what it does for us, and how it can set us up to have a better day, a day more full of energy and productivity. The list goes on, which we'll dive so much more into during that masterclass. But the work overall, like Mel said, is really just that bio-individual approach. We want to make sure that you're not getting stuck in that comparison game that we've been so cruelly taught to do, especially as women, rather than just looking at someone else and addressing their health. I feel like we look at someone else and we address the exterior first, and we're like, oh, why can't I have that? Why is I like that on her, or like this? And then we try to correct our exterior rather than correct our interior in order to like bring out the rest and like have the rest kind of follow. It's really taking the internal look at health first, and like Mel said, celebrating each other as you are and less on the appearance of how you show up physically.
So often in this day and age, we put other people in boxes, like you're talking about, Melissa, and we even put ourselves in boxes. Even when you were sharing just about lupus, how, you're going through some sort of health issue or trying to figure out what's going on. And we can oftentimes just let that lead our life. And the reality is we should be in full control, leading our lives and not doing that comparison, not putting ourselves in boxes and not putting other people in boxes, but really getting to know ourselves as the unique human being that we are, and seeing our journey as this powerful force that nobody else out there is like us. Nobody's journey is going to be the same. Of course, our own journeys, like I know both of you, with your own journeys, you've been able to help so many people just by sharing your story and your experiences and what you've come through. And I think that's so important in our world today for us to share our own stories so that we can help other people. One Girl Revolution is a nonprofit multimedia platform that is dedicated to highlighting the stories of world-changing women and girls. Help us continue our work empowering women and girls and telling their stories. Donate today at onegirlrevolution.com or on our Facebook page. But I'm curious, through both of you sharing your own stories and of course getting into the work that you're doing, could you share a story maybe of somebody that you've been able to help? It could be a client, it could be just a friend that you had a conversation with, but I'm just curious, through your own work with Living Well with Mel and Mel, or your individual projects, who is somebody is there a story you can share of somebody that you've helped through your work and through your own story? And Melanie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so someone who comes to mind was a client that I had a couple of years ago, and I have a one-on-one nutrition coaching business in addition to Living Well with Mel and Mel. And I've created a program where we address everyone as an individual, but typically people are coming to me for inflammation related problems, and then also a toxic relationship with food. This person sort of had a combination. She was dealing with some digestive issues and a toxic relationship with food, which really do go hand in hand. And she was having severe stomach pains after absolutely everything she ate. So when you're experiencing that, sometimes you think, I'm allergic to everything. I'm sensitive to everything. You're putting yourself in boxes, especially because of all of the information you see on social media and whatnot. So we really broke it down, what she was eating. Of course, we changed some things. I'm a big ingredient person. I'm not looking at counting grams of anything. I'm certainly not looking at calories. I'm looking at what we're putting in our bodies. So we did a few tweaks of food, actual food. But the biggest change that she made was she realized that she was stressed out every time she was eating. And we really worked on getting into what I call a parasympathetic state, which is making sure that your body is calm, making sure that your mind is calm, expressing gratitude for your food, just changing the way we're thinking about what we're putting in our mouth and on our plate. So I call it the food story. So we're tweaking bits of the food story. It's the who, what, where, when, why, and how, not just the what. So with her, she just started doing some breath work. She started expressing gratitude with her family before they ate dinner. And I'm not even kidding you, all of her stomach pains went away. She really realized that she was, whether it was stressed out about what she was eating or not taking a moment to herself in the midst of all of the chaos of the day, food was part of those chores and was part of the stress and not something separate to nourish your body with. So I love telling that story just because it's so powerful, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the food necessarily, it was really the how.
There was a video that just reminded me, there was a video that I shared on Instagram yesterday about this. It was a really tragic story where this girl shared that her mom had cancer and had been going for her yearly physical, and they never found anything. And by the time she went in with stomach pains and other issues, it was stage 4 terminal cancer. And so a lot of times we hear like, oh, just go in for your yearly physical. But the reality is there's so many facets, even like you're sharing, Melanie, to women, to our stories, to our journey. And it's important to look at the holistic approach of women and our bodies and our, what's going on in our lives. So Melissa, what about you?
Yeah. So this is I feel like a huge win that I just called Melanie the other day and was like freaking out. Well, I sent her a video message, actually. There's one close friend who has been really transformed drastically from following all of the Mel and Mel guidelines on reading ingredients, paying attention to what foods work for you, how to react to them, how does your body feel afterwards? Like Mel said, sitting down in, a blissful state when you go to eat, and really thinking from this mindset approach, breath work, and then she was over conditioning her body by doing these intense workouts 6 days a week. And then I started working with her with movement and just trying to be more mindful and working through that breath work with it. And she has not had a period in 3 years. And she last week just got her period back by taking this holistic approach to everything. And she said the doctor had given her this other medication to try, and she just had it on her counter, just feeling like, I need to just keep going with this. I need to just keep going with this. And then it finally happened. So I feel like that's such a big one.
That's a huge win. And even we all talked about before, I had a woman on this podcast that talks about the 5th vital sign, right? Like our cycles should be treated as the 5th vital sign. And so if you're not having one, a lot of times in the medical community, they're just like, oh, take this or do this, or, well, there might be something else going on, whether it's movement or nutrition or stress or all these other things. And like, I hope that I feel like there's a revolution percolating and you both are at the center of it in my mind. And I love following your Instagram. And so I encourage everybody who is on Instagram to follow you guys. You have so many like great things. Like I love the 5-minute workouts on Fridays because I'm like, oh, 5 minutes. I can do that. Like on a Friday night before I like go wherever I'm going, fish fry or whatever is going on. And so just doing those types of things, or even like the recipes that you have, it's all the little steps that we can take to work towards wholeness and work towards healing, which is beautiful. So one thing, you both kind of talked a little bit about your individual projects. So I'd love to kind of kick it back to Melanie, and I'd love for you to talk about your own personal business. But then also, what are the issues that you're seeing through that with regards to women? And then Melissa, I'll go to you with the same question.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I have a virtual practice where I see clients one-on-one, and I've really loved doing that. And I especially love it when I am dealing with an issue, and before somebody even works with me, they fill out an application just so that I make sure that we're the right fit. And I think that's important to note, because just like you would see a therapist, you really need to have some similarities. And I like to use my own experiences to really try to understand where someone is. So what I'm seeing a lot is, and I'm not just saying this because this is our center, this is the center of Mel and I's work together, but I am seeing so much inflammation, and inflammation meaning it could be mean so many different things. I think it's important to note that research has shown that women are more likely to experience inflammation than men. And specifically, we are more vulnerable to inflammation, mindset inflammation. So we're more vulnerable to things like depression. And it's important to kind of look at the root of that. So why are we more susceptible? Even taking our biology aside, I think it's important to look at the load that we're carrying as women, and the stressors in our everyday life. And one of those stressors is diet culture. And so I feel like I am essentially trying to undo with so many women the conceptions about the misconceptions about food that we have been told, whether by a parent, by a spouse, by a friend, or just by the subliminal messages in what we see every day. So I try to really sort of break food down into more simple terms, saying things like, does it grow on a tree? And then it belongs in your body. Was it made in a lab? And maybe your body's going to have a little bit harder of a time processing that, instead of looking at it as, well, I'm choosing the thing that has a lower number. So I think what I see is a lot of women who feel alone in the sense of how they think about food, how they think about their bodies. If there's someone who thinks about food all day, and I try to figure out what's going on there. Why are we thinking about food all day? And a lot of times it's because we're restricting ourselves and not allowing ourselves to have access to foods that actually would be serving our body in better ways than not. So a lot of the inflammation I see is based in mindset, kind of how I alluded to with that previous client.
That's so interesting. Melissa, what about you? With Moving Well with Mel, and what are you seeing with regards to women?
Yeah, I think that it's because what I am doing with functional movement paired with breath work and meditation, because what research shows is that breath work paired with actual mindful movement that's right for your body can seriously decrease inflammation. And that can help you get in alignment to set your body up for other things and to moving in other ways that might help get like your heart rate up and all these different things, in the sense of making going to the boot camp class maybe once a week or something like that. But you have to kind of start to prepare your body for that. So a lot of it is over conditioning. A lot of people think, they need to sweat hard and drench and have 1 hour of nonstop intense physical beating, basically, in order to feel like they got a workout. And the science shows it's just not true. Like, you can do so much healing for your body by being mindful about the movement. I do functional movement with breath work because I want to help set up your body so that you're training your muscles so that you don't encounter any pain that might happen, or, a lot of chronic pain individuals are out there. So we're trying to retrain the body to doing certain micro movements in order to adjust for that. So that's kind of really where it sits for me. But I mean, even now, people are wearing their Apple Watches or whatever, being like, I burned X amount of calories. Now I can go eat this, or I can go have that. And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing.
Our culture is so extreme. And I think we all sort of fall into it because we see it everywhere. We see it on social media where it's like, okay, you have to do this diet when you're talking about diet culture. Okay, like, do this, eat all the things, or don't eat all the things, or keto, or Whole30, or, but people almost do these like binge things. Like, their life becomes like, okay, I did that for 30, like Whole30. I was listening to a radio show this morning and they were talking about how they did a Whole30 to heal their body. That's great. But what happens when you swing the other way and you're like not doing any of the things? Did it actually help? I think it's like really changing your lifestyle and being willing to do that. Sometimes in big ways, but also in little ways that I know each of you have done that too, where you've done different swaps where, yes, there are big changes, especially when you're talking about inflammation. There are things that you stay away from and don't eat or don't drink. But then building it into this healthy lifestyle of moderation and recognizing that you can do movement. You don't have to go to the Orange Theory. No offense to Orange Theory. You don't have to do these like really extreme workouts, but I fall into that too. But I'd love for both of you just to share a little bit about your own journeys. And maybe for people that are out there, what are some tips and tricks or swaps? Like, if you were to pick 3 things, advice that you would give to people with regards to inflammation or your own health journeys, what would you say to people? Melissa, I'll go to you first.
So mine starts with breath because I feel like it's completely changed my life. I'm a very anxious person, a very nervous person. I'm a worrier, all the things. And so when Mel and I started working together, she had me do these breath exercises prior to sitting down to eat. And it helped so much the way that I digested the food. It's kind of insane when I think about it because I used to be a meal skipper. I skipped meals all the time to just like stay within that like calorie zone. And I eat so much now. I never miss a meal. I make sure that I feel like sometimes I eat more than my husband, and I've never felt better in my body. And I feel like not only obviously it's ingredients, but the breath work is insane. So then I just got really fascinated with the idea of how breath work can transform you and the mind. And then I started applying that with everything, with my movement. I do breath work when I wake up. It kind of is just this game changer for me. So that would be one. The next thing is ditching toxic behaviors. It's like so simple, but so hard. Those behaviors for me personally were alcohol, gossiping, and social media comparisons. And like those 3 things like overtook my life, causing so much stress and anxiety, therefore causing inflammation and flare-ups and different things. And then the last one would be, moving your body for you, finding out what works for you and what actually makes you happy. Like if that's just taking your dogs for a walk, do that. If it's backpacking or hiking or rock climbing, or maybe it's yoga, but whatever that is, of like when you're done moving your body, like, are you smiling? Like, do you feel good inside yourself? And I think that that's kind of the place to start. I mean, Mel and I love to practice dancing while we cook, which is another one that I am only given three, but if I had a fourth, it would be make your own meals.
Well, then you know what's in them. And also dancing is so freeing. I have a friend that she does like daily. She'll pick a song that's her song of the day and she'll dance around her office before she starts working. And it seems like a little thing, but even those little things can make such a difference in our day. And of course, then breath comes into that. All these different facets kind of come into that little thing. Yeah, it takes 3 minutes. But it can just free up that anxiety, that stress, that when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh no, like I'm already behind because I didn't finish everything yesterday. And we need those little breaks, those little reprieves to kind of recenter.
Yeah. I mean, put a song on while you're brushing your teeth. You got to brush your teeth. You might as well dance.
Right?
Multitasking.
Melanie, what about you?
So something that I really struggled with for so many years, and actually, if I could go back to our previous question and add that on to what I see, is the all or nothing mentality. So it would be like I would go a week with just doing, a sort of a juice cleanse and just trying to have all liquids all day. And I'm sorry if that's triggering for anybody, but that was something that I would do for a week. And then the next week I would just eat whatever I wanted because I'm like, well, I'm either doing one thing that's very restrictive and very extreme, or I'm not caring and I'm making an excuse that I had a hard day, that I'll just do another cleanse next week. And it was this really vicious cycle. And all or nothing would be the first thing that I would recommend for people to do, which is to let go of that mentality, because it also is not good for our bodies. It might seem like it is because it's like, well, if I'm not eating this for this amount of time, my body's going to respond really quickly. But when you go to the other side of things right afterwards and you're giving it everything, your body gets very confused. So the best thing that you can do is find this balance. And I know it's easier said than done, but not thinking about it so much as an all or nothing. There's no reason that you need to be eating differently on Saturday than Wednesday. But I think we create these little cheat experiences with quotes around them because we deprive ourselves all week and then we look forward to that thing. But if you're also giving yourselves food that you love throughout the week, and finding a way to do it in a healthier way. I always say, like, during the week, I have pasta, I have tacos, I have, all these things that people kind of label as bad. I just make them healthier versions. And healthier meaning just using more real food ingredients. And I feel so satisfied with food. I love to eat. And I think that's okay to feel like that. But I'm also giving myself things that I'm genuinely excited to eat. And that really helped me. And it helps my clients not feel like they need to go into this all or nothing to make up for everything that you haven't been able to have access to. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be that consistency is actually your secret ingredient. And I mean, what I mean by that is if you can just do something that's good for yourself every day in some form, that is going to be more effective than saving it for one night, whether that's, for me personally, a hot shower at the end of the day to wash it all away, whether that's doing a 10-minute movement of whether it's a flow, whether it's a walk outside. Giving yourself that time is also a metaphor for making time for yourself, prioritizing yourself, and loving yourself. And so if you can find consistency with something that makes you happy every day, it has major, major gains. And the third thing would be to eat breakfast. I know it's controversial, intermittent fasting, come at me, but I really do believe that as women, we need breakfast, because of our hormones, because it has shown to lead to better eating decisions throughout the day. Sometimes when we wait to eat until 11 or noon, where it's this first meal, you're starving. And especially if you've had caffeine prior, you are almost masking this hunger that you don't even realize is there. And we get so used to just running on that caffeine and then moving into a meal. But if we are nourishing our bodies first thing in the morning within a couple of hours of waking, it's amazing the difference it makes in what your body craves then for the rest of the day. And that's another thing to go into that consistency category, is if you can get breakfast in, if you can commit to that, I've found it to be so helpful.
Just because that is one thing of our work that we did together that really, it was very difficult for me to wrap my head around. If I ate more, I would become, like still stay the same weight. Physically, I would be okay, and I was a breakfast skipper, because I'm like, well, if I eat breakfast, then I'm going to be hungry at lunch. And because it obviously sets your metabolism to go. And so once I started eating breakfast, I actually had this insane situation where I hit my target weight, but then I maintained it through our work together with Mel and I. And I was telling her the other day how, I had a photo shoot that I did recently for Moving Well with Mel, and I'm in tight clothes, the whole thing. And I text her, I was like, the night before, I was like, I just ate a crazy big dinner. I'm eating this morning right before the shoot, and I know my body's not changing. It's not going to bloat or affect. And I was so happy because I had food and fuel. And so just let that be a testimony to anybody who's like, yeah.
Paying attention to our own bodies and our own journeys. And one thing that I want to mention too is we have to build our own army, right? Neither of you nor myself are we doing this on our own. We have nutritionists, practitioners that we go to and ask questions and compare notes with different people. And so I know there is this movement online where we see stuff. I definitely am guilty of that, where I see something on Instagram and I think this is my cure-all to whatever's happening, whether it's a hormone issue or something else. But we have to build our army as women and have people that we go to that are knowledgeable, that are experts on whatever it is, whether it's movement, workouts, nutrition, all the different things that we've talked about throughout this episode. We need to build our army. So I want to encourage women that are listening to build that army. And if you don't know, you can reach out to any of us and I'm sure we can point you in the right direction. And of course, they can follow you for more information. If you like what you're hearing on this episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now. We have new inspiring episodes coming out every week, and you don't want to miss a single one. Subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast today. Where do you each go from here? I don't have a crystal ball, so we don't really know. And I know there are a lot of things percolating, some things you can't talk about, so I'm not going to spoil anything on this episode. But I'd love to hear, what do you both have coming up? I know you mentioned the masterclass, which I will give a shout out that it launches on April 22nd. And so I will, of course, promote the link so people can easily get that in the show notes. And then on One Girl's social media, I'll promote it. But what else do you both have coming up individually, and then things that you're working on together? Mel, I'll go to you first. Melissa, I'll go to you first.
Well, Kate, I was going to ask, what do you have coming up?
I have an amazing event on April 23rd coming up with Melissa at the congregation in Detroit, and we're super excited about it. So I hope that people will join us.
Can't wait.
It's going to be awesome. But what else do you have going on? Or if you want to talk about that too, you can.
Yeah, so that event at the congregation, Kate and I are hosting. It's about just learning how to use your story to empower your journey and where you're going, where you want to go. And then Kate's going to take you through this lovely writing exercise. I'm going to take you through physical exercise and meditation. And then we're going to mix and mingle and, have wonderful conversation with like-minded women.
We have so much great support from the community too. So we're just so excited about, it's this little idea that we had over coffee or over tea one day at the congregation. And then it's really beautiful to see how it evolved. And I think it's also just testament that when women stand together, great things can happen, which I know has happened with both of you and what you're doing. But Melanie, what do you have going on? What do you have coming up?
Well, I am a full-time mom as well as a nutritionist. So not that other moms aren't full-time moms, but I stay home with my daughter in addition to running my business. So I wish I had more time to do more exciting projects, but my main focus right now is I still do my one-on-one program with clients. So if anybody feels like this resonated with them, I'm taking new clients in May. And then focusing on living well with Mel and Mel. We have a big project that we are trying to pitch right now into the world. And so that's a main focus, and just building.
It's a big time consumer.
Big time consumer. And just focusing on that and providing more information and doing more Instagram lives with people with the Waking Well with Mel and Mel series about the morning routines. So between all of those things, my days are full, but it's great. I'm really grateful to be able to have all of these things in my life.
So what do you have going on with Moving Well with Mel, Melissa?
So right now I am really working on getting certified as a pain-free movement specialist so that I can bring services to really help individuals that are struggling the same way that I did when I was first introduced to, moving for my body individually. I just really want to dive into allowing women to really take control and to stop having to identify with with that pain and what's happened to them, so that they can find new life and just allow themselves to like really fully live through moving their body the way they want to. And I am working on getting content created in order to provide that to individuals. So if you don't work with me one-on-one, you're able to work with me remotely. And then I teach at a local studio in Grosse Pointe called the Corner Studio, and I'm there a couple days a week. So yeah, you can come to a group class if you're in the Michigan, Metro Detroit area.
I love it. Well, and I will be sure to put all of your websites between the two of you. There are a lot of websites, there are a lot of social media links and all of that. And I will be sure to tag you in all of the social media posts about this episode so people can easily follow you. I encourage them to follow your individual work, but also the work that you're doing together, because I just, have gained so much from what you both are doing on social media. And so that's just an easy way that people can support what you're doing, that they can be challenged and encouraged by what you're doing and what you're sharing. And so I encourage everybody to follow you on social media, get in touch with you through your website. So I will put the links to both of those. I've loved spending this time with both of you, but before I let you go, I always end this podcast on 2 questions. So I want to ask you, number 1, who's a one girl revolution in your life? You both are so inspiring to me. And I know everybody who's listening they've been so inspired by your stories and by the work that you're doing. But who is a one girl revolution, a woman or girl that inspires you? Melissa, I'll start with you.
I literally feel like all the women in my family are inspiring to me because they're just doers. And I could go on and on, but I'll kind of narrow it to 2. So my mom, I'll start with, because she always amazed me with how she was a stay-at-home mother, raised 4 kids. And my father was a logger, so was out in the woods for multiple days at a time. So she kind of just did it all for us, ran the household, got us to all of our things. But she also just any project that needed to be done, she would just do it herself. She cooked all of our meals. And when she was off duty of mom/wife, she also just followed her interior, that passion, the flame inside her that wanted to be an author. She wrote multiple books. She got her private investigator's license and went down that route for a while. And yeah, I think the main thing is like she just like allowed all four of us to like march to the beat of our own drum kind of thing. And never once, I was like a huge dreamer, big dreamer. And you both know that I still get that way. And she is someone who never laughed, never rolled her eyes, never gave me any inkling that it couldn't be done. So I think that's why as an adult, I'm just like, yeah, you can do that. We can do that. This can happen. She always made me believe that any dream could be a reality. And then the second would be my grandmother, who lived by that motto of like, busy your hands instead of your mouth. Like, she was such a doer, and to the point where, I mean, if she had to have like a fire in order to cook dinner, she was the person who would cut the tree, chop the wood, make the fire herself. Like, she just did it. And I feel like that's also where I kind of get some of my mentality of like, if there's a will, there's a way, and just like do it yourself. Like, just find the way and just go for it.
I love these stories. I just want to say really quick that I love these stories too, because I always have, I have One Girl Revolutions on all the time, women that are changing the world. And behind every single One Girl Revolution, or in front of them, the women that are leading the pathway, there are always these amazing, incredible women. And it's like, no wonder that all of us have turned out to be these very like feisty dreamers that, chase our dreams and are willing to change. I think in this day and age, people aren't necessarily doing the same career for 30 or 40 years like the generations before us, but it's just no wonder, because they're amazing women all around us. And I love that you see them, Melissa. Melanie, what about you?
Yeah. So, I mean, mine's definitely right along the strong women lineage. Mine would absolutely be my grandmother, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but she's a survivor, which I've always just been so in awe of. She fled Nazi Germany, from a very young age, and lived in Shanghai, China, in the Jewish ghettos, and then finally escaped to San Francisco, where she raised my dad and my aunt. And she also dealt with a lot of other traumatic events in her life. And the way that she moved through life after that with such grace, with such poise, and with a sense of humor is something that I just aspire to be like her. My daughter has her name as her middle name. So I think she's still with us. And I just think of her every single day. So she's by far my One Girl Revolution.
And her legacy lives on through you and now through your daughter too. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, I've loved spending this time with both of you. And I'm going to ask you one last question. Final question of the podcast is, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be? And Melanie, I'll start with you to switch it up.
So my message would be that you don't need anyone's permission to love yourself but your own. And I think it's so important to remember when it comes to anything, when it comes to health, when it comes to just feeling good from within, the only person who decides that is yourself, and you do not need anybody's validation for that.
Yeah, mine is become the driver in your car and stay in your lane, in the sense of drive the road that's right for you, instead of veering into other lanes that of comparison of all of the different things that we sometimes often really get distracted with, and just do what's right for your body. Tune into it, learn how to listen to your body, and celebrate your wins, even small wins. Celebrate wins. I'm like, that is one thing I'm really all about.
And celebrate your sisters too, which you both are such great examples of that. And that's what One Girl Revolution 2 is all about. And I just am so grateful to spend this time with both of you and look forward to staying in touch and following everything that you're doing and supporting everything that you both are doing. But thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for all the great work that you do.
Thank you so much for having us, Kate. This was so fun.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And again, thank you for this platform and just sharing this hour with us. We appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. And I can't wait for all the things that are to come. But I love you both so much. Thanks for being on the podcast. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.